It is fascinating to me that this band's name is comprised of three very famous philosophers.
Well, it sounds like a philosopher, a psychologist, and just like a writer.
Welcome back, party people, to another edition of The First Cut, an episodic journey through the sonic underground of today. Now put the kids down for a nap, open up a bottle of the good stuff, and sit tight, because it's about to get weird.
Seriously, this is not for kids. You've been properly warned.
Hello and welcome back, party people and non-people alike. You're back on The First Cut with Danny and Evan. Say hi, Evan.
Hi, Evan.
That's good. We are doing our first, let's say, throwback episode today, in that we are reviewing our silent episodes. And I'll explain what that means here in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and get into our first pick, the band Cerulia. The album is The Wishing Tree Volume 2, The Birth of a Titan. And the starting track is The Tree. So we talked about this on a previous episode briefly. Excuse me, but I'll explain what we mean in its entirety for likely the last time. When Evan and I started doing this podcast for the first, I think, 5 or 6, maybe 7 episodes, probably not 7, but 5 or so episodes, we, for the sake of saving face with YouTube, we would not actually listen to the artists live. We were listening to them through our headphones, but we weren't recording what we were listening to. So you could see what we were listening to on the screen, but you couldn't hear what we were listening to. And we just played background music to fill in the void for the reason of copyright issues with YouTube. And eventually we said, well, that's fucking stupid, because they're just going to be mad no matter what we do. So we eventually decided to start listening to music, but those first few episodes still had the disservice of us not fully covering them, if that makes sense. So we're going back and doing that, starting with episode 3, Prog Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this band is Cerulia, and we've talked about them previously, obviously. But now we're listening back and kind of seeing, how we feel about it and if our feelings have changed and this and that or whatever. And I still think this shit is pretty badass. But it's interesting to me because I can see that this album released in 2012. And while we certainly didn't cover it in 2012, we probably did say in 2016?
Something like that.
Something like that. Because as memory serves, and I could be totally wrong, but as memory serves, I don't believe their newest release, which was The Wishing Tree Volume 3, I don't believe that was out, but regardless, we were probably somewhere roughly in that time, 2016, 2017, back when we started doing this podcast, and we were really all over the place with when we would get to do recordings. But considering they haven't had a release since 2017, which is 5 years? Almost 5 years, because it was July. That would indicate to me, well, no, I mean, because I guess the album before that was 2012. I don't know. All I can say is maybe they are, maybe they aren't still doing this, but I hope so. I hope they are.
Yeah. This is pretty cool style, of prog. It's pretty far off from like where I'm at with like my prog sensibility. I've been kind of re-indulging myself in the classics, King Crimson, and it's a lot. And well, mainly just King Crimson, I guess. Just like 70 to like 74. Oh god. But anyways, so no, this is like the modern, not gent, but the bare knuckle, big guitar riff kind of sound, and I like it. It's fun.
I was gonna say, I think this album probably would have been coming out right in the heyday of gent. For what that's worth, too. Probably back towards when bare knuckle was being initially established.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like the old. It sounds like the way that I really that I like got into progressive metal.
Yeah,
with Between the Buried and Me and Dream Theater.
Oh yeah,
more so Between the Buried and Me, I guess. With just like kind of telling a story through like these kind of long form. Right. Just like technically very intricate riffs and just kind of really high level musicianship, and I really like it. It's cool shit.
Definitely, I concur. I agree on all fronts. I'd say it reminds me vaguely more of Dream Theater than Between the Buried and Me, but I do know what you mean. Certainly, I wouldn't say it sounds all that much like either personally. It actually kind of reminds me more of like sonically similar to like The Fall of Troy, but more like manageable, if that makes sense. Because Fall of Troy is pretty all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting how like progressive rock was what it was that way back when, and then punk was born, and then Nary the Twain shall meet. They kind of hated each other. But I feel like ever since, of course there are bands who've been doing it for a long time, but realistically, I feel like with Mars Volta, like that was kind of like the huge turning point in like, hey, like progressive rock and punk rock or punk variants can like really be mixed with each other, and metal for that matter. And the world of progressive metal is quite extensive. And I think it's all the better for it because there's so much like interesting music that has come from the marriage of progressive rock and metal, hardcore, or what have you.
And obviously, if punk would have remained like completely segregated from the rest of musical genres, we wouldn't have things like crust punk and grindcore, and I know people would be like, yo, we wouldn't have pop punk either. Well, some pop punk is okay.
Yeah, I'll say that. But
At the Drive-In's pretty cool. Not that they're pop punk, but pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of like at the start of the post-hardcore thing.
Oh yeah. Or post-hardcore for that matter. Yeah. I don't even know like how that didn't come to my mind, but like post-hardcore wouldn't exist had there not been more of branches coming out of the original punk facet.
Well, I feel like, in my opinion, like the punk rock's children were a lot more interesting than punk rock itself. I get that, it's a time and a place. If you were there,
I wish I didn't agree with you, but I very much do.
Yeah, if I was there in 76 or 77 with in New York City or wherever. I feel like, I probably would have, it would have been a lot more important or interesting to me.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, you listen to the music now and it does kind of date itself.
I definitely agree. Like, it's fascinating because, I have a lot of respect for fucking Black Flag and Minor Threat and...
well, and that's like the hardcore punk. That's like the early
not even
80s
like
stuff.
the Ramones or
I'm talking
not saying
like
I don't
New York Dolls and like Velvet Underground. Like
I have plenty of well, you like the Velvet Underground.
I do like the Velvet Underground.
But I have respect for all those really godfathers of the more intense tones. It's just like not my shit, and it's one of those funny things that it's like I feel that punk was kind of like progressive in its own way, that like it did it did genuinely age. It didn't just have its time and then die. And a lot of people would say that prog, well, let's just say prog, not prog rock, but prog did have a time and then it died.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would say, like, you know, you listen to bands like King Crimson and Yes and other bands at that time. You listen to like Frank Zappa or Captain Beefheart or whoever. And there was a time for that. And then it just was like poof. Once it became a little more ubiquitous, you know, Rush was doing it for a minute, and then they became a little more common with what they were doing. Genesis was doing it for a minute.
I feel like Rush, like, you know, they really deserve like so much credit for how they really carried the torch, like with Permanent Waves. They carried that torch from the 70s into the 80s, and they made prog. They kept it relevant.
But even fucking Queen, like their first couple of albums are crazy prog. But the thing is that you can look at any of these bands that remained relevant, and you can see the change in their sound. Or God forbid, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's first 3-4 albums are so radically different. If you listen to Adam Hartmother and
Syd Barrett era,
exactly. But yeah, exactly. If you listen to Syd Barrett stuff versus like Roger Waters stuff, it's night and day.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is it lived for a time and then it just kind of died. And it's not that prog rock didn't kind of pick up that torch and really run with it, and then, for that matter, live with it. Mm-hmm. But it is a very, very different sound. If you listen to this, which is prog rock, and compared it to just King Crimson, it's night and day.
I've been listening to Going for the One by Yes. I've been getting it some good spins on my hi-fi. I'm really enjoying it. I mean, that was Yes's album from 1977. It's a good album, but it's kind of funny how you can really feel, the desperation that they were like, oh man, like punk rock is in full swing, and we used to be really cool, and now we're like really corny with our capes and synthesizers and mustaches.
Well, and I mean, of course, that was a huge thing with Genesis in that way too, when they were fronting with Peter Gabriel versus when they fronted with Phil Collins. And that's the funny thing, is like, obviously many lackadaisical listeners would be like, Peter Gabriel never played or sang for Genesis. He did. Well, I'm saying, like, people who are not, like, super historic, they're like, no, Genesis, Phil Collins. Yeah, I know Genesis. It's like, but dude, there was a time when Phil Collins was not the singer of the band.
Before Peter Gabriel wanted to be your Sledgehammer.
Yeah, and it was a very, very different time to be listening to Genesis.
He was, yeah. I mean, I only have one Genesis album on vinyl, I guess I should say.
Which one?
Nursery Crime, and I think it's good, but Genesis has never really been my sound.
I fucking love Genesis.
Steve Hackett is a great guitar player. I don't know, his playing doesn't do a lot for me though. Phil Collins, I think, is an amazing drummer. So I mean, I
think he's a brilliant singer too.
Oh, I think he's a great singer. He is, yeah. I mean, and I think Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, for that matter, it's funny how they both had incredibly successful solo careers.
Yeah.
And their first albums had just like taken the world by storm. But you know, naturally,
I feel like Peter Gabriel was to Genesis what the Beatles were to England. It's not necessarily that it was wrong, but when they left, they did a whole fucking lot better.
Yeah. So, no,
Peter Gabriel is fantastic, but I think his time in Genesis was not the best.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Then there's Jethro Tull. I can't really listen to Jethro Tull anymore.
Really?
They're a little too cornball.
Oh, man, you used to be borderline obsessed with Jethro.
Oh, yeah, I used to really love them, but it's just like, and I'm sure I will in the future. I'm sure I'll get back into it, but that's
good.
It's like, you know, their music is just so married in like blues rock, and it's just that's not really my flavor right now. Like I said, like King Crimson is really my main flavor.
Do you not still have the little sound machines that play the Aqualung riff every time you walk through the door?
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great songs from that album, but it's just Robert Fripp is such a fucking genius.
Oh yeah.
Greg Lake is Emerson, Lake and Palmer, like those fucking people are like amazing musicians.
Man, I haven't listened to ELP in the longest time.
Yeah, I finally listened to Tarkus for the first time a couple of months ago.
It's really good.
I'd never actually taken the time to sit down and listen to it. It's fucking intense.
It's fucking awesome. Yeah,
it's like all over the place and just.
But it's so cool.
It's so indulgent, but so much fun.
Yeah, but to think like that album came out so fucking long ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah. But it's like, but King Crimson, like, in like, Lark's Tongue and Aspic era with John Wetton and Bill Bruford. So John Wetton with his bass and his vocals, so fucking iconic. And Robert Fripp with just his fucking madness behind the Mellotron and on the guitar. And Bill Bruford with his big fucking giant lead foot. Oh man. Yeah. So anyways, I love that shit, man.
Definitely.
Love it. There's also a band called Comus, which is really fucking good, and I don't know if everyone's heard of them, but they should check them out because
Comus.
Can
you spell it?
It's Comus.
Sweet.
And I think their one and only album was First Utterance, and it's just it's like a psych folk, but also prog. It's pretty.
You know, it'd be fun when we, because I think this is probably about dang old time to wrap up with Cerulia, but when we come back, why don't we talk about some of the more like fringe genres with prog that actually kind of help to expand the genre?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So thanks again, Cerulia, for the second time now. You've been fantastic, but everybody gets to hear you this time. Isn't that cool? Well, we've sure appreciated it, at least. Thanks once again.
Cheers.
Cheers. We are on with our next pick. Okay, people. We are back with our second artist, Ishmael. The album is Lotic. And the first track is Friar Fight. Now, it's funny. I remember when we originally did this one, we had said, I'm kind of on the fence as to whether I would pick this for prog rock or for math rock.
Yeah,
but we decided prog rock.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's a little more traditionally math, but it's still very proggy in its own right. So perhaps maybe a fringe pick, but still it's quite good. It's quite lovely, especially if you like listening to on the YouTubes, listening to your Tim Hensons or your Ichikanitos.
Yeah.
It's quite nice.
I know. Yeah, it's definitely got that. Yeah, you're right. That kind of sound. Yeah. And or like Terra Melos or whatever.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, you're right. Math rock definitely, but I like that. Yeah, we're here in quite a different universe than the first band.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think what's going on here is very pretty. Obviously, we're looking at like clean tones, clean vocals, clean guitar. And even the drums just sound very clean and subdued.
So crisp.
I think it sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it's just very, very beautiful.
It is fascinating, though, that we've now on this list so far featured 2 American music capitals, more or less.
Yeah.
This is Brooklyn, New York, and the last one was Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh yeah,
the last artist. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Neat.
But yes, certainly. And their most recent endeavor was in 2018, which is fairly recent. Prior to that was 2015, so that timing seems about right. Hopefully, Ishmael, you guys have something else on the horizon. I very much look forward to it, at least. Man, it's good. Let's just actually let this sit for a minute, and we can get back into our combo.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's been a while since we've just been like, hey, let's just listen to this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's like this band is definitely, or at least this album's, it does that thing that any good prog should do, and it just kind of just makes you kind of start moving.
Yeah.
But then it just fucks you up with the little time signatures and polyrhythms.
Or little modal changes like.
Oh yeah.
It's wonderful.
Beautiful. But we were going to talk about what? About
I was thinking about talking about some of the more prog fringe, prog adjacent sorts of picks. So I know like Camel, those are big bands that you like. Well, I don't know that you like Camel, but I know you definitely like
I've scarcely listened to Camel. And they're a little bit more on the kind of cheesy, but kind of cool.
Dream.
Tangerine Dream's great. I was just listening the other day. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the jazz fusion side, which we were talking about as we were getting started with, like
Mahavishnu Orchestra and Weather Report.
Weather Report, yeah, Jaco Pastorius from Weather Report, one of the greatest bassists of all fucking time.
Yep. Now I was actually listening to that one album by Joni Mitchell that he was on, and then
Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah, and then he did an album with her.
You might have to
in the mid '70s. It's called Hejira, but anyways,
I don't know.
But he was on that album, and his bass work is very iconic.
Joni Mitchell's pretty great too.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, the jazz fusion side too. I mean, that's like a whole episode in itself, I guess.
Yeah, that that could be a fun episode because we've definitely done jazz a couple of times, but we've never done fusion.
Yeah. Oh God, there's also a band called Nucleus.
That's another band I've never heard of.
Fucking oh my God, they're amazing. Like just it just like they have some records that just like make your blood just like
make your
blood pump. I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say here. It's it's really good. I'm not very clever when it comes to
euphemisms.
Cool euphemisms.
It's okay.
But it's high quality. It does the good shit.
They shutter your lens.
Yeah. But yeah.
They butter your biscuit.
Mm-hmm. But yes, Prog's marriage with other genre types.
Well, and of course, I'm sure it's a surprise to no one that my most favoritist, which I fucking hate when people say that, my most favorite marriage with prog and prog rock actually was with prog alternative into the greater prog alt movement, where we see bands like Porcupine Tree, The Pineapple Thief, Radiohead. I would go so far as to say the Mars Volta. Just so many fucking phenomenal bands that kind of married later prog rock with the alternative style to make more. I struggle, and I'm afraid to say radio-friendly music as much more as like kind of more alternatively palatable music that actually really did push the envelope. I mean, for fuck's sake, when you listen to early Radiohead, when you listen to OK Computer, Kid A, and albums like that, and just think, oh yeah, it's just like every other. If you think those albums sound just like every other alternative band, the reason you think they sound just like every other because everybody copied them. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, everyone just followed on the fucking heels of Radiohead. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, they did a Pablo Honey, which of course was like just them copying the Pixies, which is fine. Whatever. Hey, every band has their kind of But then they had Creep, of course. So hey, that really carried them through. But then the Bends was just super high quality, very very good fucking album. But yes, it was just alternative rock, nothing really special or interesting about it.
Right.
But yeah, OK Computer really shot the plot, and then Kid A just took everything to a new fucking universe.
Yep. And then it was just fucking grabbing and running with it since then. So that's more of my real wheelhouse that I love is the prog alt. And it's not to say I don't love classic prog and prog rock or prog metal or wherever.
I feel like the old prog. It's like it's very much an acquired taste.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's very difficult to get into. Not only was just like the zeitgeist different, like the overall taste of what people liked was different, but the technology was a lot different. And so recording technology was, you can make the argument that like recording to analog tape was like the best, but you know, it wasn't the best.
Sounded
it was just
good, but it
what
was
they had.
so limited.
Yeah, it was very limited. Let's be honest. Digital, you're able to capture a lot more fidelity with digital recording nowadays. But
yeah, I mean, I'm really stuck there because I love the classic warmth of an analog recording, but to me, I think the best marriage is analog recording, digital editing.
Yeah, no, and then in the late 70s they started messing around with all kinds of technologies where they could do that. I think that yes, analog is. I almost feel sometimes that analog bands that, especially bands nowadays that record straight to analog tape, it's like it's more of a you make your music sound good on it in spite of its characteristics, because
I suppose that's true.
Because I don't think it's inherently good. I don't think someone just records to tape and it just sounds great. I think you have to have like the right engineer.
Well, absolutely that, yeah. But I think part of it too is that like a lot of modern equipment isn't very compatible. Like I think a lot of modern amplifiers don't really have the same. And I mean, granted, when I say, I've said this before, when I say I think, it's a matter of actually like, no, I mean, I know that that's the case, but a lot of modern amplifiers don't sound anything like fucking amps that were being made in the 60s and 70s. They sound nothing alike. So naturally, if you say like, I'm going to take my amp of choice, for example, my Mesa Boogie Royal Atlantic, which was probably made in fucking 2008, and be like, I want to sound just like I'm Brian May recording back in, fucking wherever the hell he recorded, wherever they recorded in England or whatever. It's going to sound nothing like it, even if we are using analog recording.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the technology is so much different.
I do love vintage amps, though.
Oh yeah, and vintage amps are great, and it's almost like something that it's almost like taboo to admit, and I don't want to admit it, but the thing is, digital modeling of amps, like with Axe-Fx or whatnot, they're so fucking good nowadays. Yeah, that it's just like you in an A and B comparison, 90% of the time you can't tell the difference.
I've been really thinking about getting one of the what are they called? It's not the Axe-Fx, it's the other big name.
Yeah, I don't remember what that's called.
That's going to drive me nuts. It was what Ben Eller... Well, actually, it is what Ben Eller uses. Shout out to Ben Eller. What's up, bud? Uncle Ben. But I think it starts with a K. But I just can't remember for the life of me. Anyways. Ben 10?
Ben 10?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a digital modeling solid state amp, but yeah, I've been really strongly considering getting one of those because most of what I record is DI anyways, and I just use a DI amp simulator to go from my Royal Atlantic. And the funny thing is I feel like I get good tones for the most part, but it just makes me think like, man, why don't I just fucking cut out the middleman?
I know, yeah, it's such an interesting like dilemma because it's like yeah, I guess people nowadays they want vintage amps and vintage studio equipment for the sake of its characteristics, for how it feels, and I totally understand that. If you want to play a vintage amp like a Fender Blackface or something because of like how it feels, that's totally fine because the feeling is a lot different.
Have you noticed, and I am not going to say any brand names here because that's going to fucking get me into trouble. It's going to get me into trouble. Have you noticed that a lot of... Aunt Jemima?
There goes a brand name for you. Oh, they changed that shit, my bad.
Motherfucker.
Sorry, they changed that.
Did they?
Yeah, my bad. It's just Pearl Milling Company or something.
I thought maybe they changed it to Uncle Jemima. Like she went through transition.
Uncle Jemima.
Anyways... a lot of modern guitars sound like the same. And
a lot of modern guitars?
Yes. Oh, again, I'm not saying names, but even, and actually I would even go so far as to say particularly like boutique guitars, like ones that you will not find on store shelves, sound like they're like, it almost sounds like they're trying to go for the approach of like, we actually don't want to add color and characteristics to our guitars to make them sound unique as much as we want to make them sound as boring as possible.
Yeah.
So that you can color your tone in whatever way you want. And this is why I said I don't want to say brand names, because I know the moment I say one brand name, a fucking metric shitstorm is going to fall on top of me. But there are plenty that I've heard that I'm like, wow, yeah, that sounds just like most of the other ones.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, it's almost like a guitar.
But I am trying to buy a
it's
boutique
just
bass.
Oh yeah. Well,
So-
it's almost like a guitar nowadays is really just like for either the feeling of it, which is that's understandable, because a Telecaster feels way different than a Les Paul.
Even than a Stratocaster, which is made by the same company.
Yeah, but
Fucking love my Tele, by the way.
But then otherwise, honestly, it's an aesthetic thing. People. It's like, if a band is shooting a music video, it's like, are you gonna have the Telecaster or the Strat? Which one just looks better? Hey, whatever.
Well, I mean, those are like the fucking. I would go so far as to say the Gibson Les Paul and the Stratocaster. Granted, those two are the single most replicated looks.
Yeah.
Because you got the single cut of the Les Paul and the double cut of the Stratocaster, and then fucking every goddamn company on the planet has copied those two looks in one way or another. But then short of that, you have the Telecaster, which is also a single cut, but still looks distinctly different than a Gibson Les Paul. And then, of course, I would say the only thing past that is like, oh, every company's done that too, is like the Flying V.
Yeah, I was just thinking about a Flying V, because I had thought of like how when I was like 17 years old, I went into our local music store and picked up one of those Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
Is it an actual Flying V? I don't remember if it actually is.
I don't think so.
Well, whatever it is.
I think it's a Jackson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Well, I picked it up and I was like, oh man, I love the way it looks. I'm going to play it. I sat down with it. And for one, it's like...
The black one with the white polka, like, spots?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I was like...
Classic.
I was like, oh, first off, I'm like, how the fuck do I even...
Yeah.
Okay. And then I started playing it and I'm like, I don't like the way it feels or the way it sounds.
So the funny thing is that when I sit with my guitar on my lap, and I've realized, like, I have really bad, like, guitar posture issues because of this, so I'm trying to break it. But I've been playing guitar for 15 years, and this has always been the way that I've done it. I set the indentation on my right leg, and most of my neck goes over my lap and over my left leg, so that my left arm doesn't have to extend very far outwards. I don't have to adduct, I think is the term, as far. But then, of course, when I want to go inwards, I have to go to, like, my fucking belly to get to those high frets. And I think, personally, that's not the best way to sit with your guitar. The better way is to actually sit with it on your left leg, where the guitar neck actually goes out quite a ways.
The classical style.
Yeah. But... And of course, even when I say that, that's not the best way. The best way is to have a strap and let it be floating so that it's actually much closer to your elbows, but I digress. But if you are going to set it on your lap, that, in my opinion, is the way you probably should do it. But funny enough, I didn't know that the first time I tried playing a Flying V. And I had it set on my right leg, and I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to balance this fucking thing? And I just, like, it didn't make any sense to me, so I put it down. I was like, all right, I'm going to play something else. And I felt very similar the first time I tried playing a Gibson Explorer, which is also a pretty cool-looking guitar, until I realized, like, oh, yeah, I could actually set the Flying V on my left leg to where it kind of goes into my right leg. Oh, yeah, that makes way more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that was a long conversation about guitars and shit.
Yeah.
How do you feel about moving on to our last pick, Evan?
I think that's a novel idea.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ishmael. Always happy to listen to really good art. You know what's funny? I get that we just started doing this, like, let's review the past thing, but I'm so glad that even just in our first episode, we haven't found one artist that we're like, oh boy, what were we thinking? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I really terribly fear, is like going through these and like coming across an artist where I'm like, this sounds really bad. Why did we feature this? But no. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah. So far, it's been nothing but just positive nostalgia. So thank you very much, Ishmael.
Well, and you know what they say in Brooklyn, we're walking here.
Yeah, we're walking here. All right, let's walk on to our last pick. Okay, people. Are you still with me? You have a pulse, at least. We're on with our final pick, Have No Fear by Kant, Freud, Kafka. Let's start with the first track, Principio. Sorry, excuse me. I know some people are going to be reading that and be like, that does not say have no fear. It says no tengas miedo, which is funny because the last time we did this, I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means. But now I do know what the fuck that means because I've been studying Spanish, and it means have no fear.
Neat. Yeah.
Tengas meaning, is possessive, have or has, no obviously being a negative, and then miedo being fear.
Yeah. Well, this fucking... Yeah, this album just straight up just sounds like Swans, like right in the start.
Yeah, this one goes like all fucking over the place. What's fascinating to me about this one, so first and foremost, you'll probably notice that I actually don't know where this artist came from. I can probably look closer into it. In fact, why don't we do that while I'm talking about it? But yeah, this actually was put up by Prog Streaming, who is in the Netherlands. So I know you could be like, whoa, this band's from the Netherlands. I don't believe that they are. They are from Spain, España, which actually makes way more sense because their fucking album name is in Spanish. So that makes a whole lot of sense. Their most recent release was in 2017. It's not too bad. Yeah, interesting. But yes, Prog Streaming posted this page that we're on. Perhaps we should have actually gone to Kant, Freud, Kafka's actual page, but hey, we didn't, and now we're here, so, you know.
Yeah.
It is fascinating to me that this band's name is comprised of 3 very famous philosophers.
Well, it sounds like a philosopher, a psychologist, and just like a writer.
Yeah, but I mean, I would still say they're all philosophers.
They all
own, right?
Yeah. Kafka was like sort of an absurdist existentialist before that was even a thing,
right?
And yeah, you know, Freud was a psychologist, but definitely had a sort of philosophical bent.
Yeah.
And Kant, was just a classic philosopher.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, yeah. Okay. Well, anyways. Without talking about any of the specificity of any of those gentlemen. Just an interesting choice of band name, but pretty cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of philosophy, though, Evan, I had read something recently, and I told myself I was going to do some research on this before we had the conversation, but I didn't, so I'm going to just go ahead and fucking jump headfirst into shark-infested waters.
Yeah.
I had recently read an article because there's one big thing that has been fascinating me, actually for years, really, in the idea of music theory. And I'm going to be very specific with how I say music theory in this, because typically when you say music theory, what most people hearken to is they'll say, oh, so you mean like music composition. That's not what I mean. I don't mean we're talking about modes. I don't mean we're talking about time signatures. What I literally mean is the theories behind what makes music music. So I guess you could say that more like musical psychology or musicology for that matter. But that is what I mean specifically when I say music theory. So if you hear me say music theory and it fucking feels like glass in your brain, that's what I mean. But in the interests of music theory and music psychology, I've been very fascinated with frequency relationship and how they pertain to how they pertain to emotional impact.
Yeah,
right.
That's very interesting.
So I think pretty much anybody and their mother, as we talk about this, who knows anything about music theory in the traditional usage of the term, knows that at least on a basic level, if you play a major scale, it sounds happy. You feel happy. Mm-hmm. That's just how you feel. If you play a minor scale, you feel sad. Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty basic shit. But I've thought,
and if you play the Dorian scale, it fucks you.
Hang on.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on. You're getting way ahead of me.
Yep.
But on that basal level, what is it about the minor scale that makes it feel sad? You could easily say, well, the major scale feels happy because it's super familiar. Most music is rooted in the major scale, ergo, we feel happy. Okay, I don't know if that's the truth or not, but you could say that pretty easily and I would believe you.
Wouldn't it have to do with like tension and release?
I think it does. I think it has to do with frequency relationships to mode intervals. But I had read an article, and I'm not going to mention the person's name because, again, I don't want to dive that fucking deep into shark-infested waters, but I had read an article by somebody who I believed said that they were an actual, like licensed official musicologist that said that they theorize that how we feel about these things is actually more societal than psychological. That we believe that minor is sad and major is happy because that's what people have told us to believe. Because we're conditioned to think that way, and that music, more often than not, is presented that way, and it's kind of spoon-fed that way. Because she says, and it was a she says that there are songs of specific examples that exist within those modes that actually do have the opposite feel. And one of the examples that she gives for Source is the song Losing My Religion by R.E.M., which is a very, in her words, sad song, despite the fact that it is in the minor scale. And I wanted to talk about this because I think this is a phenomenal, interesting talking point. First and foremost, before I let you run away with it, I disagree with the theory. Not 100% necessarily, but I do disagree with the theory. Secondly, I would say, in my personal opinion, I don't hear the song Losing My Religion and go, that makes me sad. I think Losing My Religion feels more bittersweet, and bittersweet does have roots in major. But I would be willing to bet, and of course, this is the huge part where I said I really wanted to do some research into this, and I didn't, and now I'm really fucking regretting it. I would be willing to bet that because, again, going into music theory, as a lot of people who study music theory knows, there is the concept of musical relativity, or potentially modal relativity, to say that each major mode does have its relative minor mode. So, for example, C major, A minor. Thank you. Yeah. So, realistically, that being said,
ooh, and you got a whole tone.
So the minor tone in A minor is what? C, just C natural. Isn't that correct?
In A minor?
Yeah.
Yeah, C natural. Yeah.
Right. I figure. So the intervals that make a scale minor versus major still exist within each other. It just depends on the focus that you give to them and where you are rooted that gives the feeling. So I would be willing to bet, and again, I could be totally wrong, so if I am, feel free to comment, that in the case of Losing My Religion, that Mr. Michael Stipe may in fact be more referential to those minor tones, to those minor intervals in his singing, whereas the instrumentation is major. He could be focusing on the minor aspects, which would cause it to feel sad, even though it was.
It's
in
funny,
a major key.
me and my wife watched. We watched. I don't know if you're familiar with Song Exploder, but it's like
I had one more point I wanted to go over on that, but anyways, please go ahead.
Well, it was like it's like a show where this I don't remember the host's name, but he like meets and does interviews with these artists, and it's like Song Exploder in the way of like they talk about the song and they explode like the stems out and they listen to every like little track and talk about the history and the feeling. And they didn't actually talk about like about that kind of concept, but yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And I really want to get more into it here in just a minute. But the only thing I was going to add was that like typically when you're writing a melody, right, you almost never start on your root tone. You don't start at your root tone and then build. You start in more suspenseful tones to land on your root tone. So you might start on a second interval or a fourth interval, move up to a perfect fifth, and then back down to your root, and that creates a sense of relief. But those tones that exist between your root and your octave have some amounts of varying suspense, and that's what makes something more musically fascinating. So all of that to be said, if in the case of a song like Losing My Religion, he actually was using the root tone as a suspense tone, it could indicate that he is actually more or less playing in a minor format to the original major composition. So in that, you could create something that sounds totally fucking sad while actually being happy simultaneously. And it's that's very interesting to me because I write music predominantly in major Lydian such tones that actually do feel more happy and jubilant. But a lot of what I write lyrically is really sad, but I don't actually indicate that so much in my music. And I've loved using that as a device because I think the allegory for depression and most people who have depression is so strong to me that, you know, they say people with depression always have the biggest smiles because they're trying so hard to hide it and look normal, that I like my music to feel happy and joyous and boisterous and all of these sort of things, whereas the lyrical content would signify that it is not that. So all of that being said, Evan, how do you feel about this theory just off the cuff?
Yeah, I buy it.
You buy that music is societal or that it is not societal?
I buy it.
Okay. Tree fitty.
I
mean, how do you feel about all of that?
Oh, God. Jesus.
It's a lot to dive into.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to dive into. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know. Does Mr. Byrne talk about that kind of thing here?
I have no idea.
How Music Works by David Byrne. I'm acting like the microphone is a camera.
Yeah. It's a book that I own, but I have yet to read.
David Byrne is a fucking genius, of course. As everyone knows.
Everyone knows. Brilliant musician.
But it's funny about all the REM stuff because I think...
I also think REM is quite brilliant, too.
They're great, yeah, absolutely. I think, and if it weren't for REM, like, fucking Radiohead would never be a thing.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, if I recall correctly, maybe wrong, but I think the single that they put out right before Losing My Religion was Shiny Happy People, which was, just another total, like, jingle pop. Shiny happy people holding hands.
Yeah.
So it's funny how it's like, exactly. It's like it's very jarring of a difference. But that song was just like pure happy. There was no ambiguity there.
But it's so fascinating because REM specifically, because obviously we're still talking about them, they were kind of like all over the map with their musical ideas and inspiration. So probably their biggest fucking song was End of the World. And that song was like, had an ultra happy vibe, right? It's the end of the world as we know it, but I feel fine.
Well, and all the references they make are fucking hilarious too. Yeah, it's pretty genius.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes,
let me go ahead and just correct that real quick.
Oh god, that was too much fun though.
Yeah, I know.
It was like one of those little grabbers at at an arcade.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, yes, very interesting theory.
Yeah,
it's a little much for me just to think about. I do like thinking about that kind of shit. You know, it's a less formulated and more kind of just I feel like kind of stoner brain kind of shit, but this is something I've been thinking about lately because I've been in the space brain mode for a little while. I really like my my Michio Kaku and my Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I do want to say really quick before you get into that, so everybody can take my point with a fucking Himalayan salt lamp sized grain of salt.
Ooh, yeah.
I am not a doctor. I have not studied musicology. I am just a bystander with a very deep appreciation of music who plays music and writes music. I almost said composes, but that would be a little pretentious.
Yeah.
That being said, this individual, as I recall, I believe, does in fact have a PhD. So clearly they are much more the expert than I am. But we are discussing theories, not facts per se. And I feel like there's a lot more classical evidence to signify the opposition to that idea. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, indeed. Well, so, but I've been in this this mindset, this mental mindset. That's the thing an idiot says.
Okay.
I've been in this mental mindset.
To the physical mind, or
in this mental mindset where I've been thinking about like the universe. I've been thinking of the cosmos as like the out of bounds area in a video game. Like we were never meant to see it or go there, but we're so fucking stubborn that we do, and it's awesome.
Fuck invisible walls.
But the thing that I've been thinking is strange is, I'm like, the universe is just a bunch of like gas and exploding stars, and
it's true.
Kind of just like it almost just seems like random nonsense, which is not random. It's very orchestrated, of course, by God. No, I'm joking.
I mean, I to me it does seem random. Yeah. Granted, that's my perspective on the outside. Certainly.
Well, string theory is an interesting thing, but
I don't know that band.
Yeah. Oh. No, but the thing I've been thinking that's kind of fucking my mind up lately is that, like, I'm like, well, the universe isn't just gas and stars and planets and whatnot, like, because music was created by humans and humans were created by the universe. So
I thought you were gonna say humans were created by music, and I was like, that's an interesting little sexy theory. Line you came up with there.
Yeah, I don't know if I could really like stand up for that one, but no, I've been thinking about how like music is like, it's just one of the many vibrations of the universe.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if Sun Ra were here, he'd be like tipping his head like, oh yeah, But
I mean, music realistically is just a very pleasant way of airwaves hitting our ears.
Yeah, it's just vibrations. Yeah. It's pretty fucking amazing.
It's like there's light vibrations, there's sound vibrations.
I mean, I really should be fucking like spinning Bob Marley and fucking smoking a Jaybird, but hey, it's just like
I can facilitate that if you'd like.
Yeah, maybe. But it's like that's what I've been thinking. It's like
we all exist in waves.
Yeah, it's all just vibrations. It's all just sound waves.
I think it's fascinating to me to think that like most of existence is negative space. So like most of what isn't. And if you think of it that way, did I even technically punch you in the eye earlier? Or did you just like think that I did?
I just thought you did.
Yeah, exactly. When in reality you fell down the stairs, and that's where that black eye came from. In a completely different side of the universe, everybody and their mother, I'm sure, knows at this point that your favorite movie of all time is Lost in Translation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I did watch your other favorite movie of all time for the first time very recently, because if you guys know anything about me, it's that I've seen very few movies, like comparatively, And I finally watched an American classic that I had never seen before, that Chelsea was actually really getting on me about seeing, and I was like, okay, fine, and then I watched it. It was really good.
I can't imagine what that is.
8 Mile.
8 Mile, there you go. What a classic.
Never seen it until just recently.
Fuck yeah, man. I watched that when I was probably 10 years old, maybe, I guess.
Sounds about right. Timing seems about right. Because that was like early 2000s, I believe.
Oh, yeah, it's 2001, 2002, I think, maybe.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I think...
313, fuck free world. Oh, man, yeah. I don't know why, but yeah, that movie has really stuck in my memory.
That's a great movie.
As a young little boy.
But I thought you would appreciate, hearing I just saw it for the first time.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Brittany Murphy.
Exhibit was in there. He's not doing shit anymore.
He's not doing shit anymore.
I mean, he was on Dr. Dre's last album, but that's the last thing I remember hearing from him.
Yeah. Well, everybody and their mother was on that album.
Yeah, that's true. That album featured fucking everybody. Such a good album, though.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah. It's all vibrations, man. Good vibrations.
What on earth was that?
That's Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Oh, I thought you were going more for like the classic like Beach Boys.
Oh.
I'm picking up good vibrations.
Ooh, bop,
Yeah.
bop. Yeah. She giving me excitations. Yeah.
God, it's such a good song.
Yeah, it's great. That whole fucking album is just a trip, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Beach Boys were great.
Definitely.
Brian Wilson.
Beach Boys were way ahead of their time.
Oh yeah,
Holy
they're
shit.
fucking psychopaths, but so were the Beatles. So.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, dude.
Well,
I'm sure we've
Brian
talked
Wilson.
about that.
I shouldn't say that about him because he actually did have like, I think he does have like sort of like mental issues that he kind of manifested in the 80s. And
You know,
so on.
funny enough, in the general trying to be linguistically better, I'm trying to actually remove lame from my vernacular. Because, I mean, it's so easy to be like, that's lame. And, I mean, granted, let's be real. Like, lame was kind of like the cheap version of saying a lot of other things that I'm not going to say. And you all know that you used to say, but you don't say anymore. But despite, those other things being ableist or homophobic or this or that or whatever, lame is pretty ableist too.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I haven't really found the nice marriage yet, but I'm working on it.
Interesting.
All of that being said, people, I think it's about dang diddly time to wrap this thing on up. How do you feel about that, Evan?
Absolutely. Yeah, this album has really been a fucking roller coaster, man.
Yeah.
How good.
You're going to listen to this on the way home?
Fucking probably. Yeah,
really
it's
good.
very good.
Indeed. Well, people, from all of us here at the First Cutland, good night.
Saying
good day.
for Scotland.
For Scotland. For Scotland. Okay, anyways. Good night, good day, good morrow, all of these things. Oh, 3 things to take out on. Jesus. I find myself just always like looking around the room to like see what I can draw inspiration from. If you have a drug test in the morning, depending on where you are locationally, it's probably not the best idea to use CBD lotion for that pain in the back of your neck. It's just much easier to tell your partner to stop being such a pain in your neck.
Well, I'm saying another one for me is
Oh, you got one?
Yeah, this is.
Hell yeah.
Don't fucking stub your toe in your grandmother. It's extremely fucking disrespectful.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
And I know Febreze...
She's sleeping on your floor. You didn't invite her. She's over there against your wishes.
Yeah.
But look, she just needs a fucking place to crash.
Yeah.
Just let her get up.
Just let her get up, do her thing, and leave.
Yeah, please.
And look, I know Febreze smells like it would taste good. Because it does. It actually tastes significantly better than it smells.
Oh, good. Well, fuck. I've been scared for a while.
You should drink as much of it as possible.
I got a full fucking bottle at home.
Yeah.
Bottoms up and that shit.
Man. Don't drink and drive. Don't smoke meth. And we'll see you back here next time.
Did we just predict Febreze shots?
2022. That is not. I am not endorsing that internet challenge. But I am saying that if people start to do it, I wouldn't be that mad.
Yeah.
But don't fucking sue us, Febreze/Lysol. Simple Green smells like it tastes better anyways. Also, if you drink Simple Breeze, or excuse me, if you drink Simple Green, you will fucking die. So really don't do that.
Please.
Please. Goodbye.